Hello, it's good to see you again. This is Don Mitchell, and I'm here to talk to you about the 2000% Solution, the book that helps you accomplish at least 20 times more with the same or less time, effort, and resources. Now, wouldn't that be wonderful? Today, our subject is chapter 15 of the book, in which we talk about identifying and motivating employees or colleagues or other volunteers to make and implement a 2000% solution. Now, in addressing this topic, I just reread the chapter and I was most impressed by the material there. I wouldn't change anything about the content of the chapter. However, I would change one thing about the title. The title, as it reads now, is Identify the Right People and Provide the Right Motivation. I would change that last word. I would change that to provide the right encouragement. Now, the reason I say that is because I now understand, after 22 years from the time this work was originally drafted, that motivation really comes from within. However, it can be influenced by external factors, such as awareness of the environment itself, and changes in the environment or circumstances or opportunities that are provided. I call some of those things encouragement. In other words, things that we can change that would affect someone's eagerness to go forward. Now, I have a little bit of a concern, though, in terms of as I read the chapter. I thought that there were points in there that could be a little misleading in terms of what you'll bump into as you attempt to apply the lessons of this chapter. The first thing is that the chapter speaks a great deal about the idea that there are people who love to make changes, are very good at it, and will be happy in doing that. As I thought about a model whom I could use for you in that regard, I think the fictional detective Sherlock Holmes can serve the purpose. As you know, Sherlock Holmes just sat around smoking his pipe, occasionally taking an injection of narcotics, a 6% solution, obviously not as good as a 2000% solution, which would be an overdose of that material. And in the course of doing so, kind of the tougher the problem, the better he liked it, even though he would get kind of frustrated along the way. Well, I've got some bad news for you. In the all the years that I've been teaching people about the 2000% solution and have been encouraging people to make 2000% solutions, I haven't found anyone who was fascinated by making these solutions in the same way that the fictional Sherlock Holmes was in terms of solving crimes. Okay, so what seems to be going on? Well, the only way anybody seems to actually do this is to have the right encouragement. So that part of the message is certainly true. So of the people that I've met who have created 2000% solutions, almost all of them, in fact, if you may be one of them, if you're listening or watching this video right now, almost all of them had no choice. So let me explain what I mean by that. These were almost all so far have been students of mine at the university who were seeking to earn either PhD degrees or master's degrees. And in deciding what project they wanted to do to apply the learning in the university programs to, they had all picked projects that required a big breakthrough. Now, since they knew no way to make a big breakthrough, my suggestion that they consider applying a 2000% solution was always well received. Now, not everyone who attempted to produce was willing to stick it through to the end. So, in fact, one of the sticking points was some people were very happy to design 2000% solutions, but absolutely no interest in actually implementing the very solution that they had come up with. So, hopefully, you're not one of those. So, but however, here's the key point. All of these people had to do this to get their degree. Okay, so Once they got their degree, did they then say, wow, this is a cool thing? I can now make these huge solutions, make more than a lifetime's worth of improvements, short period of time, then do something interesting after that, and occasionally come back and do this. Well, people in some cases have taught others how to create such solutions, but have they themselves gone out and created and implemented such solutions? Hardly a one. Now, isn't that interesting? So I apologize if this shoe fits and as you're listening to this, but I think the conclusion I can draw from this experience is that 99.999% of the world would love to have the benefits of 2000% solutions, but don't want to be put to the trouble of either creating or implementing one. Okay, so if you're one of those people, then you need to find somebody else who's going to implement with you or for you or instead of you. Okay, so where are you going to find really such a person? Well, I think there are some clues here in terms of what my experience has been. The first clue is that we need to find somebody who really has no choice. In other words, it might be that they own a company, they're in a nonprofit organization, and it really isn't going to be around in 6 months if it doesn't put in a 2000% solution. If that person legitimately cares about that organization, the people who are served by the organization, the people who actually work for or volunteer for that organization, that person has no choice but to do whatever it takes. Okay, so then from there, are there other qualities that we would want to look for? Well, yes, I think there's one, and one would be being a bit obsessive. Now, what do I mean by being a bit obsessive? We all know obsessive people. They're the ones who recount the toothpicks, on the table 6 times during the meal. Well, I don't mean that kind of obsessiveness. I mean obsessiveness that just is relentless, will not let go of something until an adequate result is created, but is not obsessive in a way that would offend or be irrelevant to the task. But someone who just really can't sleep well, can't really sit still, can't really feel relaxed if things aren't being done to the maximum to try to deal with whatever is being addressed. I think the third element is a genuine caring for other people, a desire to serve them, a desire to give them something better that really drives them. And if we think of Jesus when he was here on the earth, I think that all the things that he did particularly during his 3-year ministry, before he ascended into heaven, I think are a very good indication of what that kind of an orientation might be. And certainly people who are followers of his should be able to understand what I'm referring to. Now, if we then think about encouragement, then I think there's kind of a key lesson here too, and I want to talk about encouragement. So the first thing is that what will encourage you will be different from what will encourage the person to the right of you, will encourage the person to the left of you. Now, and also be different what would encourage me. And also what will encourage you perhaps this year might be different from what would encourage you next year because you're in a different situation. So what I want to do as an example, maybe just to kind of point out something. For example, if you do different kinds of things that are good things, do you expect to be thanked in the same way? For instance, if you wrote a large check to support some worthy cause, do you expect to be thanked differently than if you are personally present and physically assist someone do something difficult? Well, if you're like most people, yes, you probably would. In the writing the check case, you probably would just really expect you to thank you note, or possibly a phone call or a pat on the back when you see a person, but really not very much. If you actually were physically with someone, you might expect to, receive a hug. You might expect to see, a gracious smile on the person's face and then to hear some kind words. So it'd be quite different qualitatively. Now, in a work environment, the same thing really would be true. And again, so for each person will be different. So you think about yourself and the different kinds of things you do, the kind of encouragement you expect from children versus other adults versus your spouse or, significant other and so forth. Okay, so keeping that in mind, then as we provide encouragement, we're going to need to talk to the person we want to encourage, we've identified as a possible person, and find out what it is that would encourage them. Now, in doing this, I think we have to be very, very open-minded by simply letting the person tell us what do they really care about. Because if what they really care about has nothing to do with what it is that we need them to do, there's really no point in trying to encourage them to move off in this new direction. It's just not going to work. They're going to rejoin that 99.999% of the world that doesn't want to work on this 2,000% solution. So in that regard, we also then, if we found someone who then is very interested, very touched by this, we want to check and kind of see how will their values cause them to engage in this? Will their values cause them to engage in this that will not be indicated as the best way to do it for this kind of a solution? Well, that may well be the case. As an example, I remember once hiring a fellow to be an officer of my consulting firm, and one of the things we wanted to do is provide very, very high quality services, and that meant spending a lot of time really understanding client situations, developing novel solutions, and so forth. Now, this fellow felt that important value was is that you need to spend a very, very large amount of your time encouraging the people in your consulting firm staff. Okay, and that's certainly a good and valuable thing to do, but that wasn't where the innovation was needed. And since he correctly sensed that was not where the motivation was needed, even though there was a lot of encouragement provided for him to innovate in the area that was necessary, he left the firm really quite quickly, having realized that this wasn't something that he really could be encouraged to do. He really wanted to be someplace where building up the internal staff was going to do it. And I wish him well, and I hope he found a place that was like that was highly effective. And by the way, he left of his own accord. I did not ask him to leave. Okay, so in the course of doing this, then, so now let's say we have the right people, and they can be encouraged to want to do things that will be very useful. So I think there's another key point, which is talked about in the earlier lessons, but I think it's important here, is they're going to need to see regular progress. I mean, there are going to be very few people who are so obsessed that they're going to be happy if 6 months go by and there isn't something tangible to sort of point to and say, yeah, here's something that sort of came out of this. So we're going to have to encourage these people to be comfortable with that. But at the same time, we have to encourage them to be very experimental. And so that they don't get frustrated when something doesn't work, and realize instead that from experiment you always win, because either the experiment works, in which you now have something to build on. The experiment didn't work, in which you have something to build on too, because you build in some other direction. So in the course of doing this kind of thinking, we need people who can be in this kind of never land where a lot of mistakes occur. An ideal person for this would be someone who could have 9 things in a row go wrong and still feel good about engaging really in the project. So I think someone who has a great concern for truth and effectiveness, those kinds of values would be very important in this regard. Now, if you do find such a person, I hope you'll encourage them to get in touch with me, because I'm sure that there might be something else that they might want to actually create a solution for someday. So after your solution is in place, I would love to meet them, learn more about them, and perhaps I can point them to someone else in that 99.9% that really don't want to implement new solutions, and they could have a delightful time being engaged in doing that in this regard. So I think that's enough for today, and I'm just thank you so much for listening to what I had to say, and I wish you well in finding such great individuals and giving them the right encouragement so that you'll have many 2,000% solutions implemented. So I'll say goodbye for now. Take care.